Hi guys, I recently saw a movie called Me Before You and I saw something really interesting in this movie and I want to share with you guys.
Yeah, listen, I'm on it. And we can close this. Taxi! Yeah, we won't. Don't worry. Interesting choice of footwear.
What do you mean by that?
They can't be from around here.
Why not?
This is the kind of place people come to when they got tired of actually living.
I'm happy here.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't be. You only get one life. It's actually your duty to live it as fully as possible.
It's his fourth bout in 2 years. The last one nearly killed him.
I promised my parents 6 months, and that's what I've given them.
But that was before me.
I want him to live, but only if he wants to live.
I can't just let this happen.
You can't change who people are.
I mean, what can you do?
You love them.
You take care of him. He's a good one.
I don't want you to miss all the things that someone else could give you.
I can make you happy. I have become a whole new person because of you.
Do you know something, Clark? You are pretty much the only thing that makes me want to get up in the morning.
So if you were in an accident, and you were paralyzed from the neck down, would you want to spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair? Or would you consider euthanasia or assisted dying? Euthanasia and assisted dying are topical around the world. In Australia, the Victoria has become the first state in Australia that legalized assisted dying.
So today we want to discuss the euthanasia in Australia and around the world.
Between March 1996 and March 1997, voluntary euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide were legal in Northern Territory of Australia under the Rights of the Terminal Ill Act. Nevertheless, in 1997, the Australian government intervened, using the territory's power in Australian Constitution to pass legislation abolishing the act. Now, euthanasia is illegal in all Australian states and territories, and may result in a person being prosecuted for murder, manslaughter, or assisting suicide. However, this November, after more than 100 hours of debate in the state's parliament, the Australian state of Victoria, which includes Australia's second largest city, Melbourne, became the country's first to legalise assisted dying. Victoria's Labour Premier, Daniel Andrews, who is a strong supporter of euthanasia, said the new laws showed compassion. The scheme, which the government says will be the most conservative in the world, will permit adults with decision-making capacity who have been diagnosed with an incurable disease, illness, or medical condition that is advanced, progressive, and will cause death to seek assistance to die if life expectancy is within 6 months. They must also be experiencing suffering that cannot be relieved in a way acceptable for them. They need to make 3 requests, including 1 in writing, and 2 experienced doctors need to independently assess to the patient and agree that the patient is eligible. Afterward, the patient will be prescribed lethal drugs that they take themselves, except the patient cannot physically inject the drugs. Opponents argued about how it could guarantee that no person would be forced in using the laws, but the government indicated that the legislation includes 68 safeguards, such as: first, in order to assess voluntary assisted dying, a person must be aged 18 or over. Second, the person should be an Australian citizen or permanent resident in Victoria. Also, the laws include new criminal offences to protect vulnerable people from abuse.
So what is the euthanasia?
First of all, when we're talking about euthanasia and assisted dying, we're actually talking about voluntary euthanasia and assisted dying. And this can be split up into 2 types. There's passive euthanasia, which is when a patient gives up treatment. So they don't want medicine anymore and they don't want to be resuscitated. So if they go into cardiac arrest, they don't want doctors to perform CPR. Then the major issue, which has been very controversial in the last decade or so is active euthanasia. And this is split up into euthanasia and assisted suicide, sometimes called physician-assisted suicide, or PAS. So the difference here is with euthanasia, the physician will be the one to administer the dose of lethal medication, as opposed to physician-assisted suicide, where the physician can give you advice and the medication, but you have to inject it yourself.
So outside Australia, is there any other country they allow to use euthanasia?
Okay, so if you look at the diagram, active, when we say, human euthanasia and active human euthanasia, which is where the physician administers the drug, which is in dark blue, this is legal in Netherlands, Belgium, Colombia, Luxembourg, and Canada. And in light blue, so countries like India and Sweden, it's passive euthanasia is legal, so patients can give up treatment. And then if you look at countries that are in black, so like the United States, they vary by administration. And that means, so different states, different areas have different laws. And if you look at red, so for example, France, Spain, and Australia, euthanasia and assisted dying are illegal. So, and of course, the rest of the world, so the parts that are in gray, these are unknown. So in the next diagram, if you look, this is current status of euthanasia in Europe. The countries in blue where active euthanasia are legal are Netherlands and Belgium. And in green, we have passive euthanasia. So this includes countries like, the UK, France, Spain, Finland, Norway, Austria, Hungary, Greece, and Denmark. And then we have assisted suicide. So the physician can give you advice and give you the drug and tell you how to use it, but you have to administer it yourself. This is in Germany and Sweden. Now, Poland, if you see, Poland is the only country where it is currently illegal, so it's not allowed at all. And then black, which is Italy, Portugal, and the Czech Republic. This is where the situation is kind of ambiguous. That could mean that they currently don't have any laws about this at all, so they're sort of going by, a case-by-case situation.
So what are the reasons that patients with terminal illness ask for euthanasia?
After listening the above-mentioned opinions, I want to share some considerations that support the issue euthanasia for you all. Before the explanation, there is a small poll to survey of 500 people who finds 72% support rights of adults to choose to end their lives if they are suffering from a terminal illness. As a result, we can pick 3 points to discuss. The first one is that if you choose to accept the euthanasia, you can have more quality of life and self-esteem. Nobody can live with no dignity in a general situation. You can own the real control and rights to your life without any stress around you or even the social stress. Second, if you choose to accept the euthanasia, you can reduce some pain that you don't want to. Health and death are natural laws. Rather than live with pain, it is better to die safely. People also have the right to choose to die and have freedom to escape from pain. Such the rights should not be taken away. As a doctor, they should respect patients' willingness to choose euthanasia. This is also a manifestation of medical ethics. The final one is that if you choose to accept the euthanasia, you can reduce the financial burden. In the patient's family, euthanasia can relieve the psychological distress of relatives caused by the patient's suffering and family disputes arising from the various aspects of the care taken by the patient.
What about opponents of euthanasia and assisted dying? What are their concerns?
Here are some opponents' ideas of legalizing euthanasia. The first one is basic on doctors' professional ethics. Doctor must not kill. Doctors' job is helping their patients to live longer. not helping them to end their life. Then, some people think that if you take euthanasia, you basically give up on your life. But if you give up on your life, you are looking down the value of life. When you are alive, there is always hopes. Maybe the cure will be produced tomorrow. And the third reason is if there's a work called euthanasia executor. You are the person who do this and get paid every time when you do such work. The kind of activity would promote you to convince your guests to use euthanasia. That means you will be convincing them to suicide. But basically, convincing someone to suicide is a kind of crime. The first factor is that euthanasia causes a negative thinking on the elder, giving them such kind of burden on their mind. When they are getting old, they might start thinking that if they should end their life by euthanasia, or living with the illness on their body and give burdens to their families. Finally, euthanasia gives those unfilial children a chance which is not taking care of their parents when they are getting old and getting sick. Those unfilial children might force their parents to take euthanasia instead of taking care of them, that their parents used to do on their childhood.
Okay, so what do you guys think of this topic? I mean, what do you think of euthanasia and assisted dying?
Basically, I think euthanasia is an available option, but only with some restriction to protect the old people from forcing to choose this way to end their life.
I support euthanasia because I think it may be a relief for those elders or patients if they can choose to end their life if they are suffering from some incurable disease.
In my opinion, it is a good idea to help the patients support their human rights and dignity before they leaving.